Da-dum-bum-bum, ba-dum-bum. Oh, hey, there you are. Thanks for stopping by. Listen, I want to just take you on a really quick tour of the current state of this particular project. See if I can get it to fit on the screen here. Now, if a company first installs, or as we're now headed to build the public version, this will probably have a different role. But this is just sort of a default landing page for the product. It's going to poke through a few of these pre-sales events and some of these event calls, and it's going to provide your community an opportunity to begin to self-describe, to opt into certain things, and begin to enrich your knowledge of what the system and the community ultimately should look like. And then based on certain rules you've set, they would be able to join your community. So this is how you would manage large private communities, for the most part targeted at corporations, and replacing their operations with something more like the sideways org chart. But if you don't want to do that, you could still birth communities as a practice, guilding, chapters as a practice, and create a wonderful place, create those ponds where different skill sets within your organization can find each other and begin to mature that conversation and have really good growth together. All right, high five. So we've gotten through this idea of sort of coming soon, landing stopgap, and let's move into what a product might look like once they've begun to work with it. So on the back end, we're always putting the use and the user and their needs first and early. So you're going to see throughout the system this opportunity to talk back to the curators of these systems, part of the risk org or the scrum org or different parts of your organization that might be taking some curative ownership of these things. So then we see communities as a service, hubs as a service, feedback as a service, and recognition as a service. And so each of these are sort of giant pond-like structures within the organization. Over time, you'll ultimately have a mixture of all of them, but you got to pick a place to start. Some of these complement one another, and some of these are really useful standalone. We're going to take a look at communities as a service, one of the best places to get started. And we see that there are a few communities open. We have some open office hours. We have some pilots that are running, coming up. Need to work on these dates clearly. And if we dive into, say, the Community Builders pilot, we see an opportunity to create some of the banners and information around that pilot, embed a video, describe it a little bit, and then people are able to come in and learn about and participate. And so when you're maybe looking at a simplified registration screen, I'm kind of logged in here as an administrator, you'll just be given this nice advertisement. So it starts, it ends, how long is it, how many people are interested, how many are registered, how many have ever graduated this program, some feedback, etc. And so we can go ahead and register our user account. And so for any of the engagements we would take on, we can have a base profile, but we're likely to want a instance profile as we go. So here we're going to come in, I'm going to be Alice, create my nice small profile, and begin to set some of these markers that will go on to help me speed date and find others in the community so that I can get on that team of 5. And there's no way to get into the game board, to get into the community, to participate and play at the team level without a team of 5. Having said that, there are communities and community events that certainly support the team of 1 and the concept of the team of 1. But with the premise that we want to get on a team of 5, here becomes a bit of my team profile, and these are some of the main characteristics: your intensity, how are you trying to get to 10,000 this year, or are you trying to break 10 million, right? I want to learn from you in my community, but you're not going to be my teammate. Do you want to put in 2 hours a week, or do you want to put in 9 hours a week, right? These are the things that help build powerful teams. You want to build your own team and recruit and promote, all right? So once we have our profile set up and we can move into sort of that team dynamic, the rest of our experience primarily is in one, maybe 1.5 spots like this, where as a teammate, I'm able to come into my very quiet individual and team of 5, community 25. It's all condensed into one interface where I can single touch my way into all the various tools that are required to participate. I can easily get in and out of all the different community hierarchies. So if right now I need to be on a call at 25, one touch. If right now I need to be on a call of 5, one touch. If right now I need to be on the call of 500, one touch. And so we have that ease. We have this ease of publishing and consuming master calendars, important events, open office hours, reoccurring events, etc. And then you have this sense of how do we take what we're learning, take even sometimes some of the great questions that have come out of our experiences or historical runs of this program, and begin to bury them into this multi-week model. A lot of times we're launching communities based on a passion, a passionate individual, a need in the organization, a crafting skill that it craves maturity. And by resting on this introductory program and these slow drip coaching models and these very specific behavior models that require no real learning or thinking, you just participate, we've made it very easy to embrace adult learning in a very different way. And so in the past, we've done a lot of programs, private celebrity programs. We've done companies repeatedly teaching entire companies how to operate around a similar premise. This is the view from the community model. There's a slightly different view executing the operations of your company using something like the sideways org chart and the risk agile framework or some other agile lean scrum compliant framework. There's a way to run your entire business operations in here. Now our goal and where I'm headed next is, how do we zoom out? How do we zoom out and capture a public market where maybe 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 people could get together and say, I'm here and I want to get there, and I want to do it by going on this adult learning journey in the slow drip background of my life. So here's the big premise that we operate on now and how it grows into where we operate next. The first is this idea that we have the Risk Agile framework, a software edition. I've been calling it the Guild of Guilds. And the Guild of Guilds is that public-facing, the non-private, non-company, a very public-facing, adult learning MMORPG model. And we learn by doing and community and crashing and yielding to a very simple format, a very simple set of game rules, a very simple set of game characters. And so through the Risk Agile framework, we move into this program registration, team formation and management, and the lean-in tools, things we just saw. We have this idea of a team daily, the weekly, and the monthly cycle, and the iterative nature, and the weekly pattern, and the daily patterns, right? All of these are part of the game. Now, today, we have had some success, quite a bit of success, along this lane, and a bit in the business edition. And so let's start there. It's the idea that someone, even like myself, with momentum would begin to embrace the sales conversation and the exchange of training, not for the 2-day intensive, but for the 6-week slow drip go with sort of an approach, to not show up responsible for all of the answers and to get paid for everything you know, but instead to show up the game show host, to help guide people to their own greatness, to help guide people into asking better questions, and to be the one responsible for holding in one hand better questions and a framework for seeking better questions, and in the other hand a giant mirror by which larger and larger communities can see themselves and how it is that they organize and behave, and those chosen experiments, finding which ones get us more of what we want and having more of that, and which ones get us less of what we want and having less of that. And so in this model, we coming in and selling the idea of the 6-week boot camp. This is a tried and true, proven, very profitable industry. And so the 6-week boot camp, whether you tell people what to do or whether you help them develop better questions, in and by itself is a good business model. Now we've inverted the program so that we're more like game show hosts and less like sage on the stage. And we're helping people to reach into their own journey and to better that by our going together, as opposed to just maybe taking some notes or playing vocabulary memorization games. And by slowing it down and taking that 2-day intensive $2,000 course and spreading it out over 6 weeks and dropping it down to like a 5 to 10, depending on where you're executing it. Personally, the personal game is a 3 to 7% investment. You put a percentage of your time into a continuous improvement budget, and then the game helps you spend that. When you're playing the corporate edition and you're paid to play, because this is how the company has chosen to replace their operational model, then you have a 10% budget for portions of this, and then you have a carryover. You have a 10% budget, another 10% budget, not to be discussed here. And most companies already think they're having a good expression in this, and their employees have a 10% freedom budget or a continuous improvement budget, etc. But by bolting on some percentage, 3 to 10% of your journey, submitting that to the game, to your game character, to the game format, to your participations within the game community, then the growth and the learning that takes place. And we create, ultimately, expert communities. And within a few weeks, really powerful truths begin to emerge, not just through hypothesis, but through the observation of a community on a shared journey, reflecting each week on what they attempted and what they learned and what came out of it, and celebrating each other to create a safer and safer environment that we create from moment one, the oxytocin, the endorphin, the serotonin, the trust, the love, the bond chemical that so many are craving anyway. So a lot of wonderful things go into this. A lot of CBT, a lot of NLP, Agile, Lean, Scrum, servant leadership, a lot of Byron Katie, a lot of Gordon, Maxwell Maltz, a lot of Dr. Gordon, a lot of beautiful teachings restated and simplified. And by and large, the game says, stop with the vocabulary, the very expensive attempts to memorize words, and begin going on journeys. And by doing this, you're going to have a profoundly different result. So Celebrity invites people to go on the journey. Now, one of our key business differentials is after you graduate a 6-week boot camp or some 4 to 12-week boot camp, and we'll talk about some of that. But as you graduate that boot camp, you've been trained how to behave. You've practiced all the tools. You've been on a team before. You understand in a way you never could have before you participated once in how to succeed in this type of a community, in a learning environment. And then the invitation is made by the host of that event. Hey, now you graduates are the only ones eligible to join my ongoing private members-only community. And for a flat monthly fee, $50, $100, something like this, you may continue to go on different journeys. And I will continue to coach and slow drip coach, lead various journeys. And so maybe you're Tim Tebow and you're about to retire from the industry, but you really have a heart for leaders, and you have a heart for men, and you have a heart for husbands, you have a heart for athletes. And so you say, after you graduate my man boot camp or my husband boot camp or my be a better athlete boot camp, I'm now going to invite you to join my private community where all those people come together. And then they choose based on different open-ended events that I'm hosting and different materials I'm presenting and different live calls that only they are going to have access to, how they'd like to enjoy their learning adventures. It's the Mickey Mouse of the Month Club, and it's a desire, an attempt to help people build a long-term, larger and larger passive income base. And so if you look up one day and 500 people are paying you $50 a month or $100 a month, and they're telling you thank you, and they love you, and they're blaming you for a lot of good stuff that you really didn't do because they're experiencing each other, now you have a really nice situation. You have a good situation. And that community, you're slow dripping. Maybe twice a year you get on a call for 2 hours, and only your people there can get access to you as that leader. Sometimes you're participating in a way that you're kind of on retainer. Maybe you're an expert of industry, and in a sense these people are paying several hundred a month, thousands a month to be able to participate in your private community, but also because that's the only way to get on these open office live calls with you, where they're welcome to talk about intimate problems and you're welcome to speak into their lives. And in a sense, they get to think, man, I have Tim Tebow in my back pocket. If I run into a challenge, I'm going to get on a call with him Thursday, and he's going to love on me and my situation, and that's going to be great advice. So here's the pattern. That's the model. It's what the game board is good at. It's what the game is all about. It's about creating these ponds, these environments, these situations, the condition in which it's highly likely that these groups of people will find themselves accidentally thrust into large-scale group therapy in the most beautiful of ways. And you get to own and operate a fantastic company being that person who's connecting others with such learning. So if we go up, we see B-list celebrities. I guess that's probably a little better Tim Tebow example. You know, maybe the expert coach and untrainer, unteacher are just people who've always wanted to do this and done this, but they have now realized the inversion is better at scale and better in the remote model. Let people and help people and go with people on a longer term journey in a slow drip sort of way. So same model, the celebrity, and I would say that the many-to-many broadcast medium has never been used like this. It taps into the model they've built up. It allows people like Tim to take those millions of folks watching them. It allows musicians and authors and poets and painters alike a new way to take their material and their medium, create those followers. Some want to appreciate my art, some want to learn how to do my art, some want to learn from me how to take photographs oddly. I don't really do that. You know, whatever, right? And so you're creating a social community that knows how to go deep, and by design creates these intimate experiences for folks. The middle one here, socially famous. Last year, my 6th grade graduation, one of my young sons was walking across the stage. 1 out of 5 students that walked across that stage said something to the effect of, I want to be socially famous. I want to be a social influencer. I want to be a streamer. I want to be a YouTuber. They all said something about who and how they want to be, in a sense that is like beautiful and futuristic, and all the people in the room that were over a certain age cringed. But it's poetry. It's what the future needs from our students. The challenge is there is no good business model for it today. Our favorite best streamers and our most popular YouTubers are still trying to make commercials for Gain laundry detergent because they just don't know how to take that momentum and that social influence and capitalize on it. And capitalize on it in a way that doesn't distract them from doing what they love. This means a few hours a week from anywhere. You could lead a pretty powerful, very profitable experience. All right, all of that brings us to the known business edition, which we've run for a long time as far as how businesses operate. Now, by adding this larger mastermind component, the Guild of Guilds, to the business thing we know that works, we think there's a market. We think that we could find CEOs that want to get into an environment and a community with other CEOs where they are able to get on these small teams and go on these journeys and have these beautiful community breakthroughs. We think the same, that if there's this many CEOs and product owners and scrum masters within the craft realm, when you then figure out what is designers and engineers and quality assurance and business services and marketing, then we would have some 7x as many. And so by reaching out with a professional public-facing program that allows CEOs from different companies to come together and find each other, go on their boot camp, and then enjoy years of that very specific kind of private community, beautiful, right? This is the Fortnite for corporations. And we finally get to the thing that I'm here to most talk about and where I want to go immediately. And that is like Fortnite. We're going to publish it on Steam. We're going to put it out there in front of the gamers and the gamers' parents and the adults and the Xbox, in front of all the platforms, websites. We're going to make it very easy for everyone that wants to participate in the adult learning adventure game, the MMORPG for adults that have a desire to get better at something. You want to have a better marriage, you want to be a better parent, you want to be a better leader, you want to be a better manager, you want to be a better crafter. Like, that desire alone brings you to the game, gets you paying into the game. You go on some initial experience, just like in other MMORPGs, the first 6 to 10 levels. Are you learning how to take the mechanics of the game and then forget them? right? We've got to get you past clumsy very quickly so that it's forgettable, this idea of the technological footprint, and you can then move into fully enjoying and benefiting the journey. And so if you're able to imagine after some years of success, you look over in the individual game and you choose, you look in the lobby. There's a personal lobby, a spiritual lobby, the solopreneur lobby, the professional lobby, and you see this parenting and relationship and health and marriage. Again, a tried and true business model. We've had IRC channels forever. We have popularity in LinkedIn and Facebook. We have all these things, but I'm here to tell you the internet has never gotten it right. The bulletin board system that existed right before the internet, the 3 to 5 years leading up to the internet, when bulletin boards and the internet was very small town and localized, the relationship and the situation, just like when people are playing games and putting on their headsets, the MMORPG reference, people go deep in relationship. Playing this game, people go deep in relationship. Other social models, the other things the internet has to offer are shallow. They're about a shallow social outward expression. Very different. And this is the first time that we're going to crash these two worlds together. We're going to take the world of gaming. We're going to take the world of learning. We're going to show a model that works, whether they're grade schoolers or high schoolers or adults, but we're going to go straight for the people with the paychecks. We're going to go for the adult learning model, a game you play in the background of your real life. Because if you don't have 1% or 2% or 3% to put aside to improve in your marriage, that means you have 0%. And if you have 0% to set aside and spend improving in the ways that you'd like or feel or need to improve, then don't wonder why the result is what the result is, right? Like, we can capture an amazing market of eager learners who then get connected on these teams, who then get connected by, almost by accident through these tools. And before you know it, they've fallen in love and they've stayed up late and they've begun to lean in and they come to the community event and we're crashing all the time, and then we start to see those collisions, those moments that make all of it worth it times 40x. And then they start popping off and popping off. So there were a number of concepts mentioned in the opening video I wanted to run through. One is the Risk Agile framework. And it's a different take on what it would mean as a company to pursue the adoption of something like Agile, Lean, maybe historically Scrum. It's an observation over the last 18 years that the best Agile frameworks stay modern and current and really mimic, right? They're really an expression, a literary work of Conway's Law. And Conway's Law teaches us that whatever problems we have in our organizational architecture are going to be mimicked in our software architecture and vice versa. And even if you're not building software, it teaches and it shows, and we see it over and over again, where it's about changing game that we're playing and getting on the same page and beginning to actually share words and vocabulary and stopping with all the internal freestyle of process invention and development and theology. That we've accidentally grown so used to this internal turmoil that it's become its own thing. And what the Risk Agile framework stands to do is to say, we're past a period of showing up to teach new words, new concepts, new ideas. There's no need any longer to spend so much pain and time and money and energy with the word memorization efforts, or the convincing of, or the better sales pitch. What the Risk Agile framework seeks to do instead is say, just do it for 6 weeks. Just do a very known, consistent, common, has data behind it that shows it to work model for 6 weeks. And do it with your eyes open. Do it as communities. Do it as large groups, and continuously crash and talk about and evaluate what about that is delicious. And then do another 6 weeks. And do another 6 weeks, and use different external influencers and consultants, perhaps folks like myself and others, to bring in some maturity models and some wisdom from the road. But nothing about it should come out mystical or hard to quickly adopt and begin to execute fully internally. And by inheriting the answer from a execution standpoint, and then letting the following weeks by doing and talking about doing, move all of us to a different place of understanding, we can then begin the journey of really going deeper with learning about any of the things that seemed really useful and important to us on our journey as a company. And so here we have, the idea of the risk agile framework and some of its core components. This idea that once there are 12 or more people in your company, you now operate at a scale, and things change, and leadership models change, and your responsibility and nearness and connectedness to your marketplace changes. And we can observe and we can honor those critical turning points that all businesses share as they scale from 10 and 15 and 25 people to 100 people to 500 people to 5,000 people. The journey is so knowable, it's disgusting. But the shift from projects to products, the idea of micro-team organizational architectures, the sideways organizational structures, the remote workforce design architecture, not that we're all stuck working remote forever. That's not what this says. It's just like the design, the UX mobile first design movements. It's to say design for an amazing remote first workforce experience, because we are all impacted roughly by 70%. 70% of all the work required to get from concept to cash inside of your organization today requires distribution, remote, and even sometimes it's just people in the same building getting on a call bridge anyway. So pay that down, make that awesome, allow that to be extremely rich for current and future generations that truly wish to operate as distributed teams, and let them have an amazing life. Let them participate fully in your distributed communities, which are forcibly distributed. You're not going to have a large-scale crafters community. You're not going to have an organizational improvement movement. You're going to be able to learn if you don't find ways to build those largest watering holes that are very inviting to that remote first experience. You are potential at scale, or you are waste at scale. There is no third option. And so some of the other components and the pieces that could either be used independently or are part of the large organization is just that this is all you still find, unless my stuff is finally indexed, but this is all you find on Google forever if you talk about an organizational chart. It's made out of rectangles, straight lines, and dotted lines. It's useless. This is a more comprehensive understanding and look at what it means to actually operate an organization. And this, it looks like a third gear move, right? There's a moment in the organization's growth that this is the right thing to do. Before this and after this, it is no longer the right thing to do. And where you sit in the organization, the role you take, the responsibilities and accountabilities that you have and share are all moving as that scale changes. This is true no matter your business. Stop talking and thinking and believing and reading about things that have you convinced it is unique. This is what, sadly, nobody's talking about, but this is the boring truth of it. When you move at scale through these various moments, everything must change internally about how you operate, about how you treat and deal and coordinate with one another around the various lines of business and the ways, ultimately, that we make money. That's all that matters in this. And so by building your company into a sideways org chart, if that's the only thing you do, you have inevitably changed the experiment in such a way that improvement will follow. You will be forced by change. We've all felt this recently. The COVID virus immediately forced such change that it was no longer an argument, should we work remotely? Should we get better at working remotely? That had been an argument for 15 years, and in an instant, no longer an argument. And so in the same way, you find new questions, new challenges, new pressures applied to operate the sideways org chart, bring about beautiful growth and improvement that is needed, even if we don't talk about it, we don't memorize how to spell the different words about it, but as a community, it becomes an expressive part of who we are. And we realize as leaders and executors within the business, our focus should not be on reinventing process or operations. Stop it. Stop reinventing HR and stop reinventing these things. Let them move to the risk org, form their component teams, serve teams in their needs, teams delighting their markets. Oh, it's so good. We talked a little bit about this idea of the 6-week programs and operating remote agile dojos, which can take on many forms and help companies tackle and solve many problems, and almost never say, we're here for an agile transformation. That is not a useful way to take down and go with some internal, some champions, some regular folks, some everyday folks, to grab 100 people and run a small pilot in your company, or 12 people if your company's smaller, but to run a small useful pilot that has the likelihood of being able to fully participate in what's being asked. It always works. It always works. It solves all the problems we don't even know how to ask for today. And so the Agile Dojo program, taking these quite affordable 6-week bites, usually the same cost or less that it would take for you to send people to a 2-day course, you're going to get here in a 6-week slow drip coaching model we're going to go with. We're going to go together. You're going to inherit a lot of patterns and practices, and we're going to start day one not with word memorization, but literally by doing. And, all right. The Guild of Guilds, CEO guilds, so little bitty experiments of these expressions exist today in this idea of the corporate Guild of Guilds, and we'll change that, and CEO guilds and Scrum Master guilds and product owner guilds. All these things are kind of set up for us and ready to be advertised, or really do a final pass through and clean up some language and begin to really announce a lot of that. So here's a small expression that I'd recently spun up for a company, where we see the pattern of that daily company all call and some of those important sub-conversations and spin-off conversations that took place, and the culture and the cultural moments and the templates and the patterns that we give so that folks can get in and really know how to succeed and participate, and companies can begin to build a real sense of community, a real sense around what it means to tell a better story and make it visible and pursue fewer, more powerful experiments, and to maximize the amount of work not done as one of our primary competitive initiatives. And so then we also see some key open offices just while we're attached. I have my own little place. And then we see an opportunity for teams to participate in their own world. There's a different OneNote that we stand up for building our knowledge-based repository. And then each team goes deeper, and they have that same expression, where they participate in that daily stand-up. They know how to just the stuff, they get it all for free. There's no long-term cognitive cost that begins to drift us apart from these tools and these things that we know and love that work so well. But if you try to implement this using Google Docs, it will not survive it. But if you implement it using these patterns in OneNote, it's so beautiful and easy and simple. And so we bring in and we set up the teams, and we get everybody their space, and we teach everybody how to pre-note, and we show everybody how to retrospective, and we practice the community of community events, and the community events, and the big room planning and the big room retro. And whether you're 20 people or 80 or 500 or 5,000, there's a gear, there's a template, there's a map, there's a very specific, boring way to just play the game internally, yield to the simple mechanic, honor the pattern, do it wisely, become an evolutionary or a learning-focused organization, and just look out. Wow. And so anyway, and then we also have within the Scrum Master organization or the risk organization, the product organization, businesses, component teams participate, different places they plug in, and then this opportunity to produce that org learning. Now this is the reflective side of what feeds into the tool. And so as teams pull that down, as communities pull those things down, as additional learnings and weekly assignments and ways to go get extra credit and learnings to participate in, each program being a little unique, you then can run that boot camp where you replay these things, or you can become a reflective component, a curative component that promotes these things in lag, so that the wider community becomes wiser, and we can all lean in and participate when our schedule and season and championness drives us. All right, and so we stand all these things up. We dive over into something like Microsoft Teams or Slack-a-mole or something like this. We stand up the various organizations. We create the private channels. We bring everybody into their space. If you don't have Microsoft Teams, all of this stuff can be plugged in. OneNote's harder to replace, but you can have OneNote even if you don't generally subscribe to much more than basic Office suite, which most companies already have, even if they don't know or aren't using. The other side, what conference call? We can just use free conference call and fire up a free back-end bridge that'll support, up to 1,000 people at any given moment. But then individually, teams of 5, we can have 1,000 teams of 5, and then 300 teams of 25, and then 100 teams of 125, and then 30 teams of 625, and then 10 teams of 3,200. Like that scale, just focusing on 5s in that particular model comes to suit very, very nicely. So I hope you've gotten something out of this, and just, it's a little simple. It's a little simple sometimes when you give away the sauce and share the secrets, and maybe that's a mixed blessing. But I love its simplicity because it means next week we can just do it. And for a couple of weeks we can just do it. And it's not very expensive, and it's time we were already spending, and it's with the people we've already hired. And then after a couple of weeks, we can reflect on it, and we can ask some questions. We can develop better questions. We can invert the flow of energy and information. And then by the end of 6 weeks, this idea that we did it, and we talked a little bit about it as we went, and we did it some more, and then we learned about it, magnifico. And most of that learning is emergent from those in the community that just had the experience, with a little bumpering from others that have maybe been further on the journey. Hope you have an amazing rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much for spending time with me. This is the idea. This is where we're headed, this public-facing game, the MMORPG, the adult learning model that's never been seen before, that we've been offering privately forever. High five. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for spending time together. Cheers. Bye-bye.